countries to the 9 African. Now we're starting from the top, that is to Central Africa. Tanzania, Zambia, Angola, and Republic of Congo. So just imagine the kind of a border this country has with a different region which are otherwise not very stable in as far as their political setup is concerned, as far as their otherwise democratic setup, and then the as Associate Dean has already pointed out, the interference of extra, I would say, which is equivalent to the size of Portugal, Spain, Italy, France, Switzerland, Netherlands, Germany, Denmark, Austria, and Poland combined together. This country is same the size of the Western world, and mind you, this country was colony of Belgium, which which can fit in a tiny part of this country. And that is the state of affairs, as Associate Dean has already highlighted to you people. And by the way, when this the great game of scramble for Africa, they say scramble for Africa, they went through the back in 1870, and then in 1884, this portion of Africa was agreed upon in Berlin conference to be handed over to the Belgium. And this Belgium, Belgian, monarch, he entered his forces there, and he declared it as a Belgium Congo, at that time. So since then, this country has been in a turmoil, and the things have not settled. Primarily, let me be very candid about this, because of the outside interference of the political players for their vested politico-economic interests. Geography of the country is very diverse, very interesting. It's a beautiful country with a diverse nature, and this country has a vast central basin. This is a central basin and low-lying plateaus, and towards the western side also. It has a mountain towards the eastern region, shown in the green. And this region, especially, and the upper region, they has a high precipitation rates and ratio, and the thunderstorms during those rainy season are quite frequent, and they are really very dangerous in their country. And second largest forest you would be finding here. And the major river, like in Pakistan, we have a major river is the Sindh. That is, it has a tributary with a different. It's the same as is the case with the Congo. They have a Congo River, and Congo River, the major river, ultimately drains into Atlantic Ocean through the smaller tip that connects this country to the Atlantic Ocean. And these are the few glimpses. Vast central basin, and there's a low-lying plateau, mountains in the east, high precipitation ratio, and a thunderstorm. And one of second largest rainforest in the African region. And like this, that is a rainy season from April to October, and the dry season is from December to February. So for a good about 8 months, 8 to 9 months, you have a rainy season in that country, and then the relatively lesser rain and relatively dry spell. Now just imagine the state of affairs of that region, who has large swathes, and virgin land there, and still not in a position to stand on its feet. These are few other features also. They have active volcano north of Goma, the city, and this is next to the Rwandan border. This active volcano, and it has erupted many a times, and the ashes could be seen in the Goma, streets also. Lake Tanganyika is also a very important feature, which is second largest, blue water lake in the world, and it's and as far as African region is concerned, this is the number one. And then they have it is bounded by Democratic Republic of Congo, Burundi, Tanzania towards the east and the southeast side of Zambia. For degree of interaction between peacekeepers, missions, and the civilian population, coupled with satisfaction, level at the performance versus what do they expect from the peacekeepers. Fourth question was what is the threshold of militant activities, the degree and level of interaction with the militants, and the degree of acceptability of Pakistani peacekeepers, in general, and the United Nations peacekeepers in particular. What is the level and degree of control by the DRC elected, governments in various areas? And next question was female engagement team, which was a relatively new concept. For the first time, those two teams were deployed in Congo. So that was my purpose also. To what an extent, their intervention into various fields here and there, was productive for the community. And what personal and social problems are experienced by experienced by the, because there is an element of reluctance, amongst especially amongst the Muslim countries of sending their female peacekeepers into those regions. And so that kind of reluctance was there amongst the peacekeepers also, female peacekeepers also. So that was the fundamental question which needed to be answered. And what is the overall administrative and logistic state of the troops who were deployed there? With these questions in the mind, ladies and gentlemen, I entered into that country. So I accompanied one of the visit flights, chartered visit flights, and that visit flight landed closer to the Congo border in Burundi, and from Burundi we traveled by road to the first Pakistan battalion, which is deployed along the border of the Burundi. And this area, as I witnessed, having traveled through this area, the witness of wide stretches of barren yet fertile land, low-lying mountains, ranges, and the forest. And the communication infrastructure is certainly in a precarious state. The all towns, villages, and the scattered dwellings are connected with the dusty, muddy roads, and the camel and foot tracks, considerably reducing the response potential of the peacekeepers. Also, if they move into the hinterland, that becomes really problematic unless they have a speeded mobility, means of mobility available to them. Precarious communication network compounds the smooth flow of logistics to the United Nations contingent. That is what my general observation. To traveling towards the eastern border, which is the most, I would say, precarious, dangerous region in whole of the Congo, where the conflict goes on because of the vested interest. Lot many things can be said about that. Capacity issue of law enforcing agency, though the DRC government was in place after the new election, but that still leaves much to be desired. Why I witnessed those police people, sitting on the benches, without any dedicated communication infrastructure, without any dedicated accommodation, without even a complete uniform they could put on. What to talk of other weapons and logistics and other equipment which is needed the most, for implementation of rule of law. So that is the state of affair. Leading clashes in this part of the country, that is the border adjoining areas, Burundi. This part of the country, it is mostly because between the government forces and the Mai splinter groups. Mai splinter groups are those groups, for the militant groups, who are operating for their local interest also, tribal interest also, and for the vested economic interest also. Because each region may gold mines and there are other mineral mines also, very precious minerals, they are located there. So that kind of taking control and grabbing control over those resources is also one of the leading cause. Most of these groups have their tentacles linked to the interest-based groups supported and funded by the regional and foreign-sponsored powers and players. Aaj bhi jaan nahi chuti. I recall my days when I was serving in Liberia as Deputy Secretary Command. And I remember those, days when the war was going on in Liberia at its peak, but still the flight from Antwerpen or the Brussels would land into the Roberts International Airport, would take the raw diamonds, so-called the blood diamonds, and will go back. So their industry was prospering. The task performed by this unit in this region, in this Pakistan battalion, and the troops and the observers who are deployed in this area. Deployment of combat operating bases. They are generally of a company size operating base. They go and they join and stay there for a good about or depending upon the task to be performed, for good about 14 days plus minus. Go there, establish themselves, do the task of the job, and come back. And then temporary operating bases, they are generally a platoon size, about 39, 40 odd individuals, and those individuals, were deployed in that area. Then subsequently, they perform the task as per the desire of the command. Providing security to the UN missions, country and UN organization, the team visiting in the sensitive area. Then the protection to special teams from mission headquarters for integrating, for investigation of the rapes and murders. If those teams come from the mission headquarters side, then they afford them the protection. And then the local and long range patrol in line with the protection of civilian and then the mandate of UN personnel security protection and all that. So whatever the task, other than that, whatever task that is assigned by the sector headquarters or by the force headquarters, that is performed by this unit. During this, I met the first female engagement team, ladies and gentlemen, there. It was, I would say, reassuring, and that gave me a lot of confidence that these officers are, performing wonderfully well. And they had, a long discussion with the command. along discussion, along with the discussion of the command, and along with the I mean, with the sector headquarters, they had crafted a plan and of intervention into different areas and interacting with the local population, with the women folk in the region. And mind you, that the task they had performed, it was squarely taken upon their shoulders from their own resources. Female English classes they had started running wherever they were employed. They would go around, and then is the first aid training, courses they ran for the communities in various area. Importance of sanitation and clean water workshops, and then mental health related lectures they were taken, and the communities were engaged. And then is the sensitization workshop on gender equality and legal rights of the women. I mean, they undertook those classes also, and female computer training courses. So these are all those courses, all those interventions which were designed by them, and it was very well received. And mind you, it's not that they are being taken by an ordinary soldier. All women peacekeepers, they are minimum masters in their qualification. There were doctors, there were psychologists, there were the computer, I mean, literate in the officers who were serving in the general headquarters computer branch and other computer branches. So be mindful of this fact that they were, this is not just not a in a common or layman's language, it's a khana puri. I mean, just getting over with the thing that was just not like that. So because of this, their good deal of knowledge, they were able to sensitize them, and they were able to win nice repute for the peacekeepers in general, and Pakistani peacekeepers in particular. Then from there, ladies and gentlemen, then I traveled along the eastern border, and then landed in Rapid Deployment Battalion, again the Pakistani peacekeepers at Sanghi, and which is located towards the eastern region, and it covering intra border regions, intra border regions in Burundi and Rwanda. Ladies and gentlemen, just kindly please bear with me. Yes, sir. I'm so sorry. I'm extremely sorry. It's the phone from my bank. It's very important issue. Anyway, and again sorry. So this battalion, which is located, this is called Rapid Deployment Battalion. It is the force headquarters asset in Congo. And this Rapid Battalion was located towards the eastern region for the obvious reason I have already pointed to you, that it was meant to stabilize the situation in this region, considered to be the most dangerous one. This battalion was expected to spare two companies at a very short notice of 8 to 12 hours, prepare them, and they should be able to be airlifted and to be employed anywhere in Congo, I mean, that was a kind of a role that was signed, and they were measuring up to that role. I mean, twice they had been deployed in different regions, and it was much appreciated at all levels. Then overview of this task was obviously deter the internal armed group from inflicting violence against the civilians through robust presence, where necessary, use force to prevent and stop those armed groups from inflicting violence against the civilians through our robust presence, combat presence, through our interaction, through with the local leadership level, and through enforcing the writ of the United Nations, establish secure operating bases and allow safe for UN freedom of movement, prevent expansion of those armed groups where they are, interdict their weapon supply, be prepared to reinforce MONUSCO elements wherever they are in the mission Congo area, and be prepared to support or reinforce DRC, the security forces on orders. Ladies and gentlemen, having visited this area, and by and large, the landscape remains the same. By and large, situation, what I have already highlighted, remains the same. That's why I'm generally omitting whatever the more I am just adding on to that. Then I visited the headquarters, the southern sector, under whose command this reserve battalion was partly placed, though administratively responsible. However, the technical control rests with the force headquarters. And this sector headquarters was controlling these battalions, controlling the eastern region that is contiguous to the contiguous to the to the Burundi and Rwanda. Rwanda is towards the upper side, and this whole region is one of the most dangerous regions because of the geographic layout I have highlighted. The mountain, the hideouts, those areas are available, and then from the point of view of the natural resources also. Local militants and external militants activities coupled with their connectivity to the smuggling gangs present multiple threats in this area. And overall security situation was generally okay. That I didn't see any, there was a routine hustle bustle going on. People were moving towards the normal transitionary arrangement, but though the process is painfully slow for the very obvious reason, because the rate of the government is weak, and whatever is required to be pumped in the shape of political aspects that was also probably not forthcoming. Having done that, then I moved to Goma, and Goma is just located next to the Rwandan border, ladies and gentlemen. And Goma is again a relatively developed town where the force headquarters is located. I met with available Pakistani officers. Quite a handsome, I would say, presence of those Pakistani officers was there, and there I met the deputy force commander also, and during the course of discussion, he appreciated a great deal as far as the performance of our Pakistani staff officers are concerned. And the grade 1 officer has already highlighted that even the lady officers are performing very well in their respective capacity. And I had a discussion with all the officers, including female peacekeepers, their roles, responsibility, and invited suggestions that can help sensitize their successes before leaving the country. So we had a great deal of a discussion, and to my good satisfaction, sorry. So they were all. Come on, what happened? Can you see the slide?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We can see
Yes, sir.
And there is nothing, upon that. There's no other.
Sir, slides are visible with the writings on it. You can please move forward, sir.
Yes, sir, they are visible.
Okay. So with regards to my, my personal observation and the recommendation, ladies and gentlemen, and these are essentially mine, not engineered by anyone. So I am squarely responsible for my observation. Security situation in general and eastern border, that is Uvira territory along Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi, border in specific has enormous potential to reignite the conflict due to its vast porous borders along the Ruzizi Plain, the general region, which is called forested areas and the mountainous terrain, offering hideout site to the armed groups, and therefore making eastern borders safe at priority will afford fillip to the security of the DRC. It is unique state which has border with 9 other states. So so you ought to have a very strong law enforcing agency, but the weak law enforcing agency would always invite trouble from the border region. And UN needs to mentor and accord priority in capacity building of the police and the armed forces if they are genuinely And I repeat, if they're genuinely interested in ensuring stability, so that the country could stand on its feet as early as possible. Poor communication infrastructure that severely exacerbates the reaction potential of complete protection regime, warranting special attention as early as possible. Though peaceful elections have been held and political regime is in place, there are still dozens of active foreign and internal armed groups that present a constant threat to the peace at large. Political stability hinges upon launching comprehensive peace-building projects supported by a robust DDR process. You have gone through this, partly I've told you what is DDR and what is meant for. Strong governance sector, development of communication infrastructure, social sector intervention by the government effectively supported by donors and sponsors will bring positive results. And the technical and advisory assistance by the UN functionary can trigger prosperity. And I shall further elaborate this point on the next. Sorry for this poor handling. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the exploitation of natural resources is the leading concern as far as this country is concerned. Political will, and that is to say the political will of the United Nations ought to be enforced to stop the regional and extra-regional countries' interferences for their vested politico-economic motives. If they are ward off, and if they're asked to not to intervene for their vested political economic motive without making the grassroots level people I would say handing over the powers to those people, making them responsible to decide their fate, things will not be made easier. There is a large swaths, millions of hectares or cultivable land is lying barren virgin land which is there, and it can alone bring a sea change in the lives of the affected communities through UN assisted technocrats and logistics support. I urge and I put across this viewpoint to the higher ups also, that let the United Nations to intervene, work with the local government, introduce good deal of land reforms. Having introduced those land reforms, undertake a transparent division of those lands among the tribes and the individual farmers, and then educate them, train them, equip them logistically. Mind you, during my travel along the eastern border side, along the two countries towards the east side, I did not see a single tractor machine, normal primitive machine, which is important. Single tractor machine operating anywhere. And the country is such that you throw a seed of anything, seedling of anything, and it comes up. So there is a requirement, for more intervention from the United Nations side, and this country will not only feed Congo, it will feed whole of the Africa. And then is obviously it can be done through one of the main introduction of the soft loans, interest-free loans to bring the youth into its fold, because youth is the explosive, is a time bomb, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, as this slide would highlight. So United Nations has passed, Women, Peace and Security resolution that they have 2 years back, they have passed Youth, Peace and Security resolution also. So these two resolutions can best be manifested through this strategic intervention alone. And the best strategy is synchronizing the top-down and bottom-up, approaches. For the development, for the peace building, arrangement. These two approaches synchronized at the operational and at the tactical level can bring a very positive result. Mind you, they have a 60% youth, ladies and gentlemen, a time bomb ticking. If they're not put to the job, you're asking for a big trouble. So their technical training, their job opportunities, and even in the field of agriculture side also, if they're put to that, even the women are engaged for the local farming, kitchen garden, and the farms and other related economic activities can bring a positive change. and that will considerably, will add towards lowering the crime rates, which are even the street crimes rates, which are seen, and these street crimes ultimately boil up to the other level where they join with the hands with the armed groups also. Outreach to the community by the female engagement team is very well received. We need to, invest more towards that. It's not that the United Nations, it is the country who has sent their troops also. They have the responsibility towards the peace building. And that is what United Nations as of today is professing. They are moving in a very methodical way. I attended a conference a few days back organized by the New York-based think tank. And I realized that there's a greater degree of awareness onto that all the peacekeepers have their responsibility. It does not mean that there's only man standing with a gun is only responsible for one task. No, they owe their responsibility towards other tasks also that can bring a positive change in the other protection regime side by side, protecting them from the guns. Interaction and facilitation of local communities need to be made more robust by integrating their outreach with mission mandate, beneficiaries, donors, sponsors, UN programs to afford a sustainability. That is a weaker link that I've identified. Everybody is, in most of the missions, is working towards adding feather to their cap. Look, we have done this. Look, why can't you say that we, the United Nations people, have done this? Till that time, this unison response is not seen. Things will not be easy. Everybody is, trying to win, trying to, create his own space. And this creation of own space and not for the collective, I would say, approach is a non-starter, is likely to create problems. And problems are there in this regard. Interconnectivity, duly coordinated through good offices of resident coordinator can bring positive impact. So whatever resources have been made available by the United Nations, those should be transparent at the mission headquarters level. Things are discussed amongst all stakeholders, and things are made easier for flow of those logistics, for flow of those technical assistance, for flow of those humanitarian assistance wherever they are. If that is there and everybody is contributing, then there is a win-win situation. And that is what the United Nations and the peacekeepers must be looking at. And DDR process, again, is a painfully slow process, ladies and gentlemen. The splinter groups, whenever they are promised, when they are projected, when they are invited for the DDR, there are not enough resources provided to them to bring them into the mainstream in a comfortable fashion. So what do they do is, one odd individual coming here, he finding, things are not moving they are not being, the proper reinsertion is not being done properly, proper reintegration is not being done. So what do they do is that they go back and join the same group. So that is the sole, I would say, problem which is leading towards this kind of an arrangement. While DSC government is in place, the process needs to be expedited with a speedy stability, and presence of militants and splinter groups present a constant threat, and they needs to be addressed to bringing them into mainstream as early as possible. Disarmament, demobilization, and reintegrating reinsertion in provision of non-food items, in provision of food items, in provision of money, in provision of training, in provision of sensitization, and then bringing them into the main force so that they could usefully contribute towards the country. Few glimpses. I end with my briefing, and if I've taken some more time, my apologies, but the core purpose was to give you my heart out as far as my visit was concerned and what I earnestly feel about the region. Now I hand over the podium to Brigadier Imran Rashid. After Brigadier Imran Rashid, Brigadier Aga will take on the responsibility. And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And then the panel will be open at the end for your question answer session. Assalamu alaikum and good morning once again.
before Brigadier Imran Rashid comes online,
Sir.
I just want to say that it was a fascinating presentation, and we got to know not only the geographical length and breadth of the country, we also came to know that the main feature that is lacking, or which is making things complicated in DRC, one of the largest countries in Africa, one with problems with the UN peacekeepers is deployed, is the lack of will on the part of the United Nations. I think Salim Beg made that absolutely clear. There is a lack of will on the part of the United Nations to bring about peace, and there is a turf war over there, as I understood. Every part of the UN system wants to be acknowledged for what they are doing. So I think when these things are there, when there's a lack of will, when the country is suffering because there is no genuine law enforcement agency, there will be a lack of what I would say purpose, aim, focus. Is it just to deploy UN peacekeepers, or is it to bring about UN peacekeeping? Thank you very much, Brigadier Salim. I think it was a fascinating, and it will give our young researchers a lot of food for thought of what can be done. It will give a food for thought for Pakistanis, what we can do to do there. Maybe some kind of farming. You said there's not a single mechanical farming implement over there. So that was
so discussing it also.
Absolutely. So this is criminal, I would say. In the almost the third decade of the 21st century, no farming, mechanical farming implement over there. Over to you, Brigadier Imran Rashid. Thank you very much.
Okay, good morning. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. We had a very good, healthy session yesterday for the protection of civilian participant of serial
Brigadier Imran, sorry, you are not visible completely. Your chin is missing. If you can adjust your laptop. Yeah, that's better. That's better. Yeah, thank you.
Now you're looking very... Switch off the camera because after some time, because naturally we will go on the presentation part of it. But very early morning to Major Annie from UK, from our friends from Nigeria. And definitely we do have a participant from Japan also. I think it is a good afternoon to Japan. Do we have Dr. Salma today also with us? Okay, if she's not there, I will start off. Give me a minute to upload the presentation. So again, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and a very good morning, good afternoon, and good morning to all the participants. Now I will be basically homing on the Pakistan peacekeepers, whatever their activities are in the peacekeeping mission in Central African Republic, which is the neighboring country, which is Congo, DRC Congo. You just heard a very elaborate presentation from Brigadier Salim. Now I will be going as per the, hold on. This is a sequence in which, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be covering just some geography, demography, and history of that particular country, so everybody knows how it looks like. What are the present environments of that country, the threat which the civilians have, the peacekeepers have, and the armed forces have, and how have they mitigated or how have responded to that threat, and what are the challenges as of now to the peacekeeping and the way forward. Now, whatever I will be telling you is definitely, as I also visited the MINUSCA last year and did had experience of meeting the force commander, the sector commander, the other civilian appointments, and definitely the Pakistani peacekeepers. So everything will be sort of a dovetailed in this presentation. Coming on to the geography, demography, and history of Central African Republic. Now, this is how it looks like. It is a landlocked country, and I think, as you know, maybe some of you will be knowing it, there are about 49 landlocked countries in the world, and Central African Republic is one of the landlocked countries having the borders which you see, Chad, Sudan, South Sudan, Congo, you just heard about Congo, and Cameroon. The landmass total area is visible. It is a bit less than Pakistan for the Pakistani participants, but almost touching Pakistan's landmass size. This is divided into different states like towns. It has got 16 of them prefectures, which are basically the provinces, how the country is geographically managed as of now. The climate is definitely tropical, rainy season, as there is in Africa from May to November. We have rainy season, and now it is dry season from December till April, and the temperature varies as reflected from 16 to 38 degrees centigrade. It's landlocked. It definitely depends because the landlocked countries are depending on their neighboring countries. So most of the trade routes, as far as car is concerned, depends upon Cameroon and Sudan. Road network, about 24,000 kilometers with merely 3%, which is blacktop roads. Ladies and gentlemen, see the amount of tracks, and if you can see the slides, visible slides, the mud tracks, and they are definitely very difficult to be traveling, especially during the rainy season. So coming on to the population, it is almost 5.6 million. Language, basically, they speak French. It was a French colony, Sango. It is ranked among 10 poorest countries of the world, and the 50% of the adult population is illiterate. It is declared as the unhealthiest city, 189th in the world. In the population demographic, it is 126th. Worst city in the world for the young people. Is quite a difficult area to survive. And as per the HDI, it is 188. Human Development Index, 188 out of a total of 189 countries. So it is on the lowest bottom. This is how the religion is. We have Roman Catholics, Protestants, about 35% are of having indigenous beliefs, and about 15% are Muslims. Ethnic groups, whatever they are, Baya, Banda, Madija, and Sara, there's different ethnic groups which are there. The others also, about 17% of them. That is how the city demography is. Population mostly lives in rural areas, 81% of them, and 19% are urban dwellers. Now, this slide shows the history of Central African Republic. It was, remember, the era of slaves, which we had. This shows the era of slaves, 16th to 19th century. It was occupied by French in 1894. It turned into a swell governance in 1946. It got independence from France in 1960, and Daco was instated as a president for almost 5 years. He was overthrown by Bokassa, who ruled till 1979. Now, Bokassa was also overthrown by French in 1979. Again, the French domination. Daco was reinstated. It led to instability. It turned to internal strife. It went to numerous coups during that. And then this country transformed into bush warfare for almost 6 years, sort of a guerrilla warfare, what you call it. Now, this is also remaining on the history. In 2011, French intervention to restore order. Election in 2011, General Bouzizi was elected as a president. Seleka is a Muslim rebel group which is still operating there. March on Bangui, which is the capital of Central African Republic. Christians from Anti-Balaka to contest. That was what happened between the two Muslim and Christians dominated organizations. African Union authorized MISCA. It's basically under Chapter 8. We have been going through the officers which are in PSCS 5, Battalion 5 knows what is Chapter 8. Composite of anti-Saleka and anti-Balaka formed, banning anti-Saleka recommended or commenced against violence. Internal strife breaks out serious civilian protection crisis. And then definitely it was in 2014 April, ladies and gentlemen, United Nations decided to establish a mission in Central African Republic, which is now acronym is known as MINUSCA. Coming on to the environments part of it, having suffered 4 coups since independent, CAR has been marred by political instability and violence ever since, and this is still going on. Despite an elected government since 2016, ladies and gentlemen, state authorities have largely failed to extend beyond the capital, which is Bangui. Armed groups, there are 14 of them. They are still continue to operate throughout the country, and they do challenge, as normally the non-state actors do challenge the state authorities. Coming on to interfaction tussle within the armed groups, so actually they have got their ethnic linkages and competition for prominence in illegal taxation, fuel violence, resources basically, creating great consequences for the civilians, and the protection of civilian is a primary responsibility of all the peacekeepers as per the mandate. So a number of armed groups, and they do have resource dominance, and definitely in that dominance they do target the civilians. Peace agreements are all fragile. It's a document which is done by all the armed groups, but definitely it's a fragile document because it does not transcend down to the other persons, to the lower tier of that leadership. It is between the government of CAR and 14 armed groups since 6 February 1919, marred by implementation delays and viewed with suspicion by the armed groups. Political groups and regroup in the wake of forthcoming 3 days after today, on 27th of December 2020, as after 3 days, we will be having general elections in the Central African Republic. It also breeds uncertainty, and the violence is still continuing going on. Yesterday, it was also in the news that one of our most important town after the capital, Bangui, has been captured or taken over by one of the armed groups. So the crisis continues. There is a very limited outreach of the state institutions beyond the capital. They are in the capital, but beyond that, whatever the areas are, the state authority is not existing, which hampers good governance and definitely the delivery of all whatever is required. As was told in the first brief, and as per our experience of peacekeeping, Africa has this problem of dominance of national sources, be it in a colonial path, be it presently. So everybody has a vested interest of natural resources and economic hubs, and it also becomes a source of contention among the state organs and the armed groups as well. There are incidents of looting, harassment, and violence against humanitarians on the rise due to the absence of law enforcing agencies, as they are either not well trained, not well organized, and not that much in strength to control this humanitarian issues. Civilians, particularly women and children, exposed to protection risk, exploitation. We will dwell more on this issue later on. There's a lack of business opportunity, job education, and public service, which definitely will fuse instability in the region. Now, this was just regarding the environment, the demography of the country. I will now start because definitely we did discuss about different forms of threats to life, to physical integrity, to freedom. So similarly, CAR has many threats. One of the threat is the challenges are political instability within the country and the political instability which is in the neighboring country. We have a ongoing peace mission MONUSCO which we just heard in the first half. In Congo, South Sudan, we also have one of the largest peacekeeping mission. Then there is instability at times in Cameroon, Chad. So political instability within that country and within the neighboring countries also adds fuel to the fire and is one of the reasons for instability. And terrorism, armed groups, they operate. It's a dominance of armed groups. The non-state actors, the bandits, they do carry out terrorism and definitely they target the civilians and to make it an unstable country. Then there is also a transhuman movement across the places. People do move to and from Cameroon, from Chad, from South Sudan and Congo. So that is another challenge which the country or the peacekeepers have. And definitely the refugees which are there, whether they are coming from different countries of the instability there in their neighboring countries or moving out of Central African Republic is one of the reasons of this refugees problem. Coming on to the main threats which are there as of now, armed groups are there and criminal gangs are there. There's a protection of civilian and intercommunal violence going on, and definitely there is an attacks which are going on MINUSCA and definitely other humanitarian actors which are there in that. Then coming on to the enablers part of it, the persons which are there, non-implementation of the peace agreement, whatever the peace agreement has been signed, whenever they gave the consent in 2014, that agreement is not being implemented. The political process is going on, but not in that same manner in which normal or developed country has. It's a very poor country. Poverty, I did tell you in the beginning, in the demography, is a very poor country, and definitely the food is insecure. The food is insecurity, and there is transhuman movement, seasonal migration, which is also one of the threat which enables or multiplies the main threats. Now coming on to the response part of it, MINUSCA, which was an African-led international support mission, was approved under United Nations Security Council Resolution 2127 in December 2013. African Union military observers authorized White UN Security Council Resolution of 14, and definitely then we came to the MINUSCA, which is ongoing, which is still continuing, approved, ladies and gentlemen, by a resolution of 10th April 2014. It was 21449, which laid the basis of the mandate and how the peacekeepers should continue their work. MINUSCA mandated an objective defined under resolution of 15th November 17. It was the same resolution which was in 2014 was redefined in November 2017. MINUSCA mandated to ensure, we did discuss the protection of civilian participants about the concept of robust peacekeeping, White United Nations Security Council Resolution 248 of 13 December 2018, and that was with the purpose to protect the civilians. The local commanders under this Security Council approval of the concept of robust peacekeeping are supposed to protect the civilians right rather than looking back at the higher headquarters. Coming on to the comprehensive mission mandate, what is the strategic priorities in that? Definitely protection of civilian, improve the security, protection of human rights, secure the environment, support IDP returnees. Definitely the second priority at the strategic level is to decrease the armed group threat, promote reconciliation and stabilization, political process. You have heard regarding this DDR, build up the new rule of law, and combat impunity. And definitely one of the major things which nowadays the peacekeepers are tasked to do is peace building. That is meaning strengthening accountable of the state authority. That is the security sector reform part of it. Coming on to the priority task as far as his mission mandates are concerned, as this course, whatever we are going for the participants of Protection of Civilian 5, protection of civilian definitely is and has been a priority task. in almost 90% of the missions, ongoing multidimensional missions. Definitely provide robust monitoring and reporting of human rights violations, the core objectives for which the United Nations functions. They are supposed to facilitate the delivery of humanitarian assistance, prevent further violent conflicts or threats to core state institutions while promoting a sustainable transformation of the context, and definitely, last but not the least, protection of United Nations persons and property. This is the third principle which we read of principles of peacekeeping: use of force and self-defense, and defense of your mandate. So in that regard, this is a priority task as far as peacekeepers are concerned. Coming on to what is the end state which this country should have, and what has been during my most deliberations with the major appointment like the force commanders, sector commanders, the civilian officials, and definitely the peacekeepers, focusing on Pakistani peacekeepers. Armed group no longer pose a significant threat to the population and the legality of elected government state to demonstrate capacity to fulfill its primary responsibility to protect all civilians in MINUSCA and to manage conflict and address its root causes. So this is what is the ideal state which everybody wants, where the de-induction or the peace building, peacekeeping mission in MINUSCA can be wound up. There are so many resolutions on which, barring the first resolution of 2014, which are adding on. They are known as cross-cutting thematic tasks. It can be of human rights, it can be of child protection, sexual violence, peacekeeping operations, protection of civilian, security sector reforms, DDR, concept of that. So they are all resolutions which are in which the peacekeepers are mandated along with the host government to carry out and to implement whatever the UN Security Council has passed resolutions from 2014 till 2018. And this mission resolution is continuing. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is how MINUSCA is there. This slide shows the persons which are deployed, total persons almost. It's a multi-dimensional mission. When we have more than 10,000 persons, the mission transforms into a multi-dimensional mission. So authorized persons as of now is almost 12,870. You see military persons which will be there, almost about 11,000 plus. We do have police persons and definitely an appropriate significant civilian component. So it is a multi-dimensional mission in that regard. This slide shows a bit of more detail for the comprehension of all the persons which are listening. We have military staff officers, military observers, and contingents which are deployed in this area. This is almost, as of now, is 11,000 plus. The authorized is 11,650. So as of now, ladies and gentlemen, there are 23 countries which are part of ongoing peacekeeping mission as far as MINUSCA is concerned. Troops, I just told you, authorized troops are 11,000 plus. Coming on to the fighting formations, the contingents, and the enablers. So we do have about 7 infantry battalion, which is the basic fighting elements. And we have aviation, there are helicopters, engineers, military police, and special companies which are part of that. And definitely to undertake all these things, we do have military observers and we do have military staff officers, about 480 in this entire contingent. So 23 countries are participating. Now the top 10 troops contributing country as of now are as shown on the view file on the slide. It is led by Rwanda, which is the biggest troops contributing country, closely followed by Bangladesh. We have a participant, kept near most probably for Bangladesh in this course also. Pakistan stands third, and we then is Egypt, so Zambia, Burundi. So one thing to note it down to conclude is, in this is that it is the African countries and the countries from South Asia, including Nepal, which are the most 10 top contributing countries. And this is almost in all the missions, which is in Mali also, which is in Congo also. So one point of discussion can be that the developed countries are not that much contributing as the troops contributing country or the police contributing country as of now in different ongoing missions, peacekeeping missions. Just a flight regarding how this leadership is. We have a president and a prime minister, which are from Uganda. Then definitely you have heard regarding the special rep of the Secretary General, who is also the head of mission, is from Senegal. We have two deputy SRSGs. One is from USA, Elizabeth, and Destiny Brown is from Canada. The first commander, I think, took over last year, is from Burkina Faso. And for the FPUs and the police persons, we have Major General Pascal, who is from France. So it is a multi-dimensional mission. People from developed countries at the decision-making authority level are there also. Coming on to the Pakistan contingent deployment, this is how Pakistan contingents got engaged in Miniska. It was in 2014. We had the infantry battalion, which was deployed along with the engineer company. In 15, we had again Pakistan aviation unit. The aviators got deployed. It continued deployment. As of now, we have got an infantry battalion. We have got two engineer companies, and we have got an aviation unit, which are doing peacekeeping operations in Central African Republic. We had a contingent headquarters which was established in 2017. Now, this is how the peacekeeping are deployed. There are three sectors, Sector West, Sector Center, and Sector East. Every mission, peacekeeping mission, has a such like area of responsibility, specific demarcation, like CAR has. Pakistan sector, ladies and gentlemen, are deployed in the center mission, where we have the infantry battalion, which have its permanent operating bases and temporary operating bases, which is Kaga Bandora, namely where they are located. Then we have the aviation unit, which is at Bangui, which is the capital of CAR. We have got another engineer company, which is deployed in Sector East. So if you see this deployment, Pakistan peacekeepers are focused on the central sector, and Sector East, we also have a engineer company, and two engineer company are also having bases at protection, permanent operating and temporary operating bases. The tasks which have been achieved by our peacekeepers, which is a pride, the infantry battalion, they have restored normalcy in the entire area of responsibility, particularly Batangafu town, including deployment of foreign police units. They have facilitated that. The training and deployment of the army, it's in a very embryonic stage. In Kaga Bandora is the security sector reforms, so that the state becomes viable, state organs become viable, and they reduce the threat to the armed groups. Aviation support, ladies and gentlemen, let me share with proudness that only Pakistan aviation helicopters are flying over during night hours and supporting other sectors. We have got 3 MS-17s there, and they are round the clock busy. Whereas we have got other aviation units, but the force commander, the sector commander, categorically mentioned with a matter of elevation that the Pakistani aviators were the best of the lot in the entire area, on call, round the clock, during even the rainy season, in the hard rush, and during the night hours also. Engineers have carried out a lot of repairs and maintenance of roads in central. This is basic part of peace building effort. And a point of, again, proudness is there is zero tolerance of sea cases since the mission deployed, Pakistani mission deployed in Central African Republic. Some of the tasks which are being carried out and are being accomplished by the infantry battalion regarding protection of civilian, humanitarian assistance, the protection of UN persons and installations, the CIMIC for other participants from PCS is a civil military coordination aspect of that, and QIP is the quick impact projects, whatever you want to build in, which is assigned by the force headquarters and contingent headquarters. We do promote international and national justice, rule of law, and definitely carrying out seizure of all the illegal arms. Engineers are also carrying out their task of basically construction, maintenance of airfields, assisting in bridges repairs, maintenance, construction and rehabbing of the existing infrastructure, survey and route reconnaissance, and definitely the demolition task of that. Coming on to the CIMIC activities, the civil military coordination, this is winning of hearts and minds, which the Pakistani peacekeepers have done. They have participated in different activities, social welfare, healing touch, reaching out, solidarity, entertainment. So everything is there. This is just to build up the relationship as local laws, national ownership. That is what every contingent and Pakistan contingent has also done accordingly in Miniska. This was a letter of appreciation which the aviators got from the Portugal Chief of General Staff when they evacuated injured person, road accident person, very serious person from Portugal Army in some other sector. It was very harsh environment, full of dark night hours where it was raining also, and the Pakistani aviators flew. They took the injured person, evacuated it to the level 2 hospital, level 3 hospital, and in response, the Chief of General Staff, Portuguese Army, definitely thanked Pakistan Army through a demi-official letter. Current status, this is what I have, my observations are. This is also the observations which have been shared by the peacekeepers. Weak government unable to keep law and order. The state institutions, the armed forces of Central Africa is in embryonic stage. Weak to provide security to the entire country. It's almost say 16,000 persons in total, and if you can see the landmass and the disperse of the population 5.4 million. So it is difficult to be everywhere and protecting everywhere. There was a Khartoum agreement in Sudan which was signed by government of Central African Republic and armed groups last year, and to implement it at the lower tier is a big problem. You do sign these agreements, ladies and gentlemen, in every, this is part of the consent that you do sign an agreement, but transforming that agreement to the lower tier of those groups, the child soldiers, is quite a difficult task because it is not a paid army, it is the rogue elements which are there. So at times you have on the spot person, the rebel leader is the commander who can abide by that agreement or can disregard that agreement and have his own agreement with the local community or with the peacekeepers. Armed groups, they definitely continue to commit atrocities which do result in killing of persons, and these atrocities are definitely based on religious affiliations and other resource dominations. Massive insecurity which is felt by the local populace. There is a problem of humanitarian and political support, and humanitarian assistance is adversely definitely has an impinge because the lack of security definitely hinders the humanitarian assistance. Coming on to the challenges which is peacekeeping mission has at the highest platform, persistent poor governance which is there, which is ongoing. There's a challenge with the Pakistani peacekeepers are doing and other peacekeepers are doing as a part of peace building effort of the capacity building of the state institutions. You have to have police, you have to have army, you have to have other law enforcing agencies, including intelligence agencies, so that the state can function on its own. Security sector is weakened from within, and the neighboring countries do have their own share of instability in Central African Republic. There's a weak and centralized public service. Public service is almost not there. It's only in Bangui to some extent. Paucity of funds, mismanagement of public finances, lack of developmental work, which is ongoing. They do go on this religious identities and socio-economic deprivation and rise of entrepreneurs of violence is there. What actually is the end state with this country has before this mission is winded up, the drawn down? that is the end state of every country. This was the end state, whatever we witnessed in mission in Liberia, in Cote d'Ivoire, and Sierra Leone. And this is the end state where the mission will ultimately come and CAR will be restabilized. This is from a transition of a country to a democratically elected legitimate government. The state institution should have maximum capacity to maintain law and order across the country. So building up, see the amount of challenges, see the amount of threats, and now see this, whatever the end state, this MINUSCA has, ensure basic respect for human rights. One is the core objective of United Nations, ability to address impunity and to protect its people, the civilians. Then definitely Africa and these colonies, one of the major attractions why the French were there in Africa. I think French had about 8 to 10 colonies there in Africa, and Mali, including Cote d'Ivoire, including Gabon, Senegal. So basically the resource was the main driving force factors for this colonialism. And if the country can manage its own resources and provide basic social service, I think there is no need for any peacekeeping operations in any country of the world. Coming on to the military end state, whatever military thinks, state administration of the country is restored, with security institutions having adequate capacity to address residual threats is available. We have elections coming within 3 days. I told you 27 December 2020 this year. We will be having elections in Central African Republic, and the violence is ongoing. Violence is ongoing, and it is continuing, and it is making the country more unstable. So in my personal view, this mission is likely to carry on. The challenges which were focused in the earlier presentation by Brigadier Mirza Salim Beg are the same challenges which are ongoing, because it is a neighboring state of DRC Congo. The same challenges are there, and same challenges have to be overtaken. Still, this time the country is stabilized and is governable by state institutions. After the recent ongoing violence, the Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, condemned the escalation of violence and calls for all actors to urgently end all hostilities and to work together to ensure conditions conducive to the holding of credible, inclusive, and peaceful elections on December 27, 2020. The Secretary General also requested or called on all stakeholders to resolve any dispute. Now, the 14 armed groups, and one is which is much more organized, is Muslim-dominated. Anti-Seleka, Anti-Balaka is a Christian-dominated group, which are fighting for dominance and definite for population, dominate for territory, and dominate for the resources, or vast wealth of resources which this country has. And the Secretary General reaffirms the United Nations commitment to work together with national, regional, and international partners to support the people and definitely the government of Central African Republic. I kept it short. I kept it focused. What some of the things were my personal observations. We never had, at that point of time, we never visited the female engagement team, which were deployed, but they had been deployed. But for the female peacekeepers or the female participants, we had the female peacekeepers as part of Force Headquarters, Pakistani female peacekeepers, and as a part of Sector Headquarters, and they were doing a very important jobs like operations staff, like intelligence staff, like gender advisor, and like civil military coordination officer. So they had their semblance, and the sector commander did mention that they are the best staff officers he has. This is what he told me regarding in his entire sector. So this is all I had as far as Central African Republic mission is concerned. I thank you all. And after I think we have another presentation of Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast by Brigadier Azam Aga, and thereafter we can go for any clarification, discussion as far as CAR is concerned.
Thank you very much, Brigadier Imran, again for a very interesting and fascinating account of Central African Republic. And since you have been there, so you gave us a word from the horse's mouth. What I have come to know about Central African Republic is that it's a landlocked country among one of the 49 landlocked countries in the world. It's very sparsely populated, only 5.4 million people live there. 3% of the area has roads. Difficult times. There is a lot of law and order situation over there. The presidential elections are scheduled, and I was reading, I think in the newspaper yesterday or day before, that there has been an influx, hundreds of troops from Rwanda, which incidentally is one of the largest peace troops contributing country, and Russia into Rwanda to forestall any coup prior to the presidential elections, which are scheduled over there. So they have problems. We are proud of our peacekeepers. We are proud of the aviators who are performing very dangerous tasks in the pitch dark nights, and we are also proud of our female engagement teams. But what kind of lessons can we draw about problems in this African country? It's the problem is as old as the neighboring DRC. It's over 60 years that they've been in conflict. The Muslim militias and Christian militias are fighting. So there's this religious element over there. I'm sure there are problems with regards resources, because no conflict is without resources. It's always over resources. So if the Muslim militias and Christian militias fighting, there must be something that they want to control. So peacekeepers have a look at the peacekeeping angle. Researchers have a look at how we can resolve conflict over there, and what are the prospects of Pakistan and other Asian countries of reaping advantages from this very, very poor country. So over to Azam Agha now for his presentation on Côte d'Ivoire.
Togrul sir, can I request a stretch break of about 5 to 7 minutes? I think it's been a long session so far for the participants.
Somebody wants to leave, he or she can leave. Nobody's stopping them. You can continue with your presentation.
All right, I'll do that.
We will have in-situ stretch.
Brigadier Agha sir, I would just, for your information, I would let you know, just to put it across for your information, that the time of the session has been extended. It is now till 1300 hours. We would request you to sum up your session in whatever time you can, maybe half an hour or 35 minutes. After that, we'll have last 30 to 40 minutes for the question answer sessions. So overall, the time of this webinar is now till 1300 hours, please.
But one clarification, Jeevan, I had a scheduled lecture.
So we will adjust it. We will adjust it accordingly and some other.
No, what I will suggest, because I have gone through that lecture, and the HOD is also listening and is visible on the screen also. So what I will suggest that my lecture basically was a summing up of whatever I just told them in the first 3 or 4 days, whatever we had. So we can skip that lecture. I will take on it next week, and the HOD can take his lectures at the proper time.
Indeed, sir. This is how we are going, sir. This is how we are going. Our time is now till 1300 hours, and after the lunch break, by 1400 hours, we'll start with our routine program, sir.
Brigadier Gaga, please move on.
Thank you very much, sir. Assalamu alaikum, and a very good morning to all the participants. I'll take you on now for the third and the last presentation in this seminar, which is about Ivory Coast, or Côte d'Ivoire, as it is called in French. In order to make it a little different from what we have heard so far in the two presentations, where the emphasis was more on peacekeeping, I have tried to focus in my presentation on greater aspects of peace and stability, on the role of United Nations, and increasingly the part it is playing in the hands of great powers. Some even go on to say that it has become a tool in the hands of great powers, where they want to implement their policies using United Nations. So let us see. At the end of my presentation, instead of giving you my conclusions, I would feel satisfied if I leave you with questions that that sets you thinking more on the subject, and then you can carry out your own research on the topic. Now, just give me a minute so that I can load my presentation. I think it's taking longer because of the presence of a clip describing Ivory Coast. So a little more patience is needed.
You're not audible, sir. Not audible. Unmute yourself.
Gidirava sir, I would suggest that you can remove the clip from the presentation and run it separately. You can first run the video separately and then start the presentation. That way, I think it would be better.
Okay.
I think I'm already, thank you very much. I'm already there. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, my presentation basically encompasses the time period of 2005, when I was there in Ivory Coast as a staff officer for a period of 1 year. And these are my thoughts entirely on Ivory Coast, the situation, the political turmoil, and everything, because there was one question that we were constantly confronted with. As peacekeepers, the locals would come up to us, and they would always ask us as to why are you there? Because at that point in time, peace was prevalent all over the country. There was no turmoil, there was no fighting, there was no killing, there were no rioting, and the majority of the population was at a loss as to why such a large number of UN peacekeepers and a large number of French forces were deployed in their country. All right. And throughout 1 year, I also tried to find answers to it. Let us see at the end of this presentation, can you come up with plausible answers? As you can see, Ivory Coast sits at the bottom of West African states in, on the banks of Atlantic Ocean. And the next slide will show you its neighbors. It has Ghana towards its east, Burkina Faso and Mali towards its north, Guinea and Liberia towards its west. The whole country is divided, if you can see, with a brown thick line in the middle of it, which runs east to west. This is the buffer zone created by UN forces between the northern part and the southern Ivory Coast. It has two important cities, one being Abidjan, which is a coastal city, which is the largest city and a trade hub, and a Yamoussoukro, which is in the middle and which happens to be its capital as well. Towards north, there was only one large city of concern, which was Bouaké. So you can see Bouaké and Yamoussoukro are separated by presence of a thick buffer zone in between. So this is how Ivory Coast is divided geographically. Now, let's have a look at historical issues, chronology of events, which led to the turmoil in this country, as to what really happened. As we've been told in the previous two presentations, that most of Western Africa was part of French colonies. So in 1842, France imposed its influence over the coastal zone of West Africa, and Ivory Coast was made into a colony in 1893. In 1960, Ivory Coast was granted independence from France, and Mr. Boigny became the president. And he remained president till he died in 1993. Another gentleman who is a major participant in the political history of Ivory Coast by the name of Alassane Ouattara. He comes from the north. He is a Muslim by religion, and originally from Burkina Faso, which is a country which lies north of Ivory Coast. He is married to a Jewish French wife, and all his life he had worked at IMF. And he returned to the presidency to become president in year 2000. As you would go through the presentation, you would come to know that he was a gentleman who was enforced upon Ivory Coast by IMF way back in the 90s. So he was not an original leader from Ivory Coast. The second important person which figures out in this turmoil is Mr. Laurent Gbagbo. He came into power after a brief period of General Gui in October 2000. And as a result, the fighting erupted between President Gbagbo's mainly southern Christian supporters. He comes from south. And his main opponent, Mr. Ouattara, who comes from north and who is Muslim by religion. Because of this particular problem, majority of the world today considers Ivory Coast turmoil to be religion-based. It is my endeavor during this presentation to acquaint you with reasons other than religion, which formed the basis of turmoil in Ivory Coast. Because I am of the view, it's my considered opinion, that it had nothing to do with the religion. In 2001, President Gbagbo and Mr. Ouattara met and agreed to work towards reconciliation. But thereafter, the rebellion started. In 2002, there was a mutiny by soldiers in Abidjan who were unhappy at being demobilized because it was an attempt by both the leaders to demobilize the military so as to reduce the risk of conflict in the country. The military did not like that, and therefore they mutinied in 2002. And in 2002, the French forces deployed. Please mark this note, this date of 2002. A year later, in 2003, a UN political mission deployed. This was without military power, so it was not a peacekeeping mission. But we see that in 2004, deadly clashes erupted between the two parties. And President Gbagbo used a heavy hand, and as a result of that clashes, first contingent of UN peacekeeping forces deployed. But there were no mass killings, there were no murders, there was no pillage in this, which should have prompted arrival of UN forces. In November 2004, we see that Ivorian Air Force, controlled by Mr. Gbagbo, attacked the rebels. Since the French force, which was commonly known as Leacon, was aiding the rebels, therefore the French forces also came under attack by Ivorian Air Force, and as a result, 9 of the French soldiers died in the airstrike. All right, and this led to UN arms embargo on Ivory Coast. In June 2005, 2 years later, massacres in western town of Tuekwe occurred, and according to President Gbagbo, more than 100 people were killed, but it contradicts widely held view that ethnic rifts lay behind the violence. All right, so this violence was not based on North-South divide. This violence was not based on Muslim-Christian divide. Please note that till 2005, only approximately 100 people had died in the turmoil. Yet, there were presence of a large French military in the region, as well as UN peacekeeping deployment. Later on in 2010, Election Commission declared Mr. Ouattara, the gentleman from the north, as winner of presidential election. But the present incumbent, Mr. Gbagbo, refused to give him the reins of power. As a result, in 2011, Mr. Ouattara, with the help from UN force, captured Laurent Gbagbo and then handed him over to the International Criminal Court in Hague in November to face charges of crimes against humanity. I mean, that was the stage set for Mr. Gbagbo. But we find that UN Security Council lifts embargo on Ivory Coast diamond trade in April 2014, 3 years after Mr. Ouattara was elected as president. Now, just to recapitulate, I am going to give you pertinent details of external forces who arrived in Ivory Coast. The French Leacon, comprising 4,000 troops, which were supported by armed helicopters, arrived in September 2002. And they arrived independently of the United Nations, ostensibly to honor the defense agreement signed between France and Côte d'Ivoire in 1961. The United Nations operations in Côte d'Ivoire, known as UNUSI, came into being on April 2004. They took over from the contingents of ECOWAS, that is Economic Community of West African States, while the force Leacon, which was French, which was by then totaling more than 4,600 men, remained there, and that remained under French command, stayed in place to support the United Nations force, UNUSI. Please mark that at that point in time, there was no turmoil. UN force itself was not needed. What to talk of a French force of over 4,000 coming in support of UN force. And that force which came in support of UN was not under command of UN. So it was independent. It's worthwhile to mention that in 2005, Pakistan Army had a contingent of Field Engineer Company, a transport battalion, staff officers and military observers in Ivory Coast. It later grew, it swelled in size, and later on we also had a force commander from Pakistan Army. Now, keeping that background in mind, my study tells me that the origins of conflict were different. It was not based on ethnicity. It was not based on religion. So what were the origins of conflict? The number one origin was economic. You see, uneven distribution of economic development between the North and the South. In the South, we had Atlantic Ocean, which was connected to the rest of the world. So the southern part of this country, developed disproportionately to the North. The North remained poor, whereas the south became very rich. As a result, people started migrating from the other countries towards east and west towards the southern part of Ivory Coast, which further destabilized the economic divide between the north and the south. Socially, more than 21 million inhabitants are divided into more than 60 ethnic tribes. There is a perception among the northern tribes, which are mostly Muslims, that the southern tribes have been ruling Côte d'Ivoire to their advantage. Furthermore, the situation is worsened by the sectarian tendency of the regimes. Since the power remained with the south, so they naturally supported the Christians who were not in majority. And to this we add the factor of immigrants who originated from the northern neighboring countries of Mali or Burkina Faso. And they were Muslims. And they were also immigrants who were coming from east and west, and they were Christian. Religion problem is not endemic in some other African countries, but can nevertheless stir the already existing inequalities. These are not caused by religion, but since the religious differences coincide with the north-south dispute, the north is mostly inhabited by Muslims and south by Christians, the already existing inequalities are easily attributed to religion. The next aspect is political. Now you would find that Mr. Alassane Ouattara, who came from north, did not belong even to the territories in the north. He was born in Burkina Faso. He was brought up in France. He was married in France. He had served all his life, IMF, stationed in France. And suddenly he was brought into the political arena of Ivory Coast. So he was considered as an outsider by mostly influential South, where Mr. Gbagbo swayed. He ruled Ivory Coast from South. And then there are certain external factors also which are involved, which fueled the conflict. Many experts believe that the security situation in Côte d'Ivoire is closely connected to the destabilization of West Africa, particularly in countries such as Liberia and Sierra Leone, which suffered brutal civil wars at the turn of the century. So once peace and tranquility started to prevail among those countries, many rebels in those countries, instead of laying down their arms, turned to Ivory Coast. They immigrated and took up residence with various factions. So what happened after the Ivory Coast episode was over? This is very instructive if we focus on the aftermath. The ousted president, Mr. Gbagbo, what happened to him? As UN helicopters bombarded the arsenal of Laurent Gbagbo, his spokesman condemned what he called illegal acts and war crimes aimed at assassinating the entrenched ruler of Ivory Coast. So this was the contention of Mr. Gbagbo, that it was UN helicopters who bombarded, which was a fact, and this was an illegal act of intervention. Now, what did the Russians have to say about this? The Russian foreign minister also questioned the legality of the airstrikes, suggesting the UN peacekeepers may have overstepped their mandate to be neutral. Now, the sanest voice came from a local community of African Union. The chairman of the African Union declared that foreign military intervention was unjustified. But we see a diagrammatically opposed view coming from EU and the West. The European Union had been especially active on the call for action in the African country. 5 pronunciations in 1 month alone had been carried out by the EU High Representative, Catherine Ashton, on Côte d'Ivoire. The United States also strongly condemned Gbagbo's acts of violence perpetrated against the people of Côte d'Ivoire. Now you see the pulls and tugs between the international community, whereas UN becomes a laughingstock. Now let's focus on France. Remember that Ivory Coast had been a French colony for a very long time. So what France had to say about all this? Even though France left Ivory Coast in '60, but it still maintained its hold on its economy through leftover French and Lebanese business community. Force Lecon arrived in September 2002, independently of the United Nations, for an agreement which had been signed in 1961. France and later the ECOWAS sent large military contingents to separate the two sides, north and the south. President Sarkozy of France waited for a specific request to help with the airstrikes from UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, and as in Libya, emphasized that French military action was strictly to support UN efforts to save lives. Phyllis Bennis of the Washington-based think tank International Policy Studies says the timing of the operation strengthens the argument that the airstrikes by United Nations troops are more of a political than a humanitarian intervention, aimed at helping to reestablish the French presence in Francophone Africa. What is clear that if the UN continues to sanction military interventions in national conflicts, there will be continuing questions about whether it is acting to protect civilians or using humanitarian justifications as a smokescreen to force political change. Now let's have a look at the UN side of the story. The Security Council recognized Mr. Ouattara as the winner of disputed elections and slapped sanctions on Mr. Gbagbo to try to force him to cede power, regime change. But it is jittery about any suggestion that it has joined the fight on Mr. Ouattara's side. And it is still jittery whenever the word Ivory Coast is mentioned. During a private council briefing, Mr. Leroy, who was the Undersecretary General, he was bombarded with questions about reported strikes on the presidential palace, which would clearly be outside the mandate of protecting civilians. The peacekeeping chief assured them the target was heavy weapons in the area, not the palace itself. You be the best judges. Others, such as Phyllis Bennis of the Washington Post think tank, Washington-based think tank, International Policy Studies, says the timing of the operation strengthens the argument that the airstrikes were more of a political than a humanitarian intervention, aimed at helping to reestablish the French presence in Francophone Africa. She says the intervention in both Libya and Ivory Coast suggests that powerful forces are once again using the UN as an instrument for their own interests, rather than legitimizing it as an institution of international law. What is clear is that if the UN continues to sanction military interventions in national conflicts, there will be continuing questions about whether it is acting to protect civilians or using humanitarian justifications as a smokescreen to force political change. I would urge you to read further on issues like sovereignty. I mean, there is classic definition of sovereignty, which is displayed on the viewfoil, and there is practical manifestation of sovereignty, which is many rungs lower than the definition of sovereignty, which we can see, which we can witness in the world today. I would also urge you to read more about intervention. Look at bombing of Ivorian presidential palace as a means of protecting citizens of Abidjan from heavy weapons. Was it intervention? On the other hand, we see that the coalition that went into East Timor with the consent of the Indonesian government is not considered as intervention. We look at the Gulf War. It is not an intervention because it was not essentially an intrusion into the internal politics of Iraq, though it arguably developed into that with later military efforts to protect the Kurds, but an effort to aid Kuwait against an invasion by Iraq. So these are various manifestations of intervention and some actions which are not considered as intervention in the recent past of world politics. That leads me on to another issue of humanitarian intervention. Please read what all is included in humanitarian intervention. Does it constitute a calculated and uninvited breach of sovereignty in the name of humanity? Though humanitarian interventions do not necessarily require the employment of military force. For example, you could lay embargoes or sanctions. The term refers normally to a situation in which force is used. These days, we find that humanitarian intervention has become a major focus of debate within governments, international organizations, and think tanks. So study more about this. What is the standpoint of UN on intervention? UN, as you all know, was formed in the aftermath of World War II to promote peace and stability. It recognized the importance of sovereignty, especially for newly independent nations or those seeking independence from colonizers. Intervene in matters which are essentially within the domestic jurisdiction of any state. But is it doing that? That's a question which needs further going into details of. Now, look at the audacity and in the statement of the 25th US President, William McKinley, while confronting the problem of annexation of Philippines. He says, "It came to me one night that we could not turn the island over to France or Germany, our commercial rivals. That would be bad business and discreditable. We would not give them back to Spain. That would be cowardly and dishonorable. We could not leave them to themselves. They were unfit for self-governance. There was therefore nothing left for us to do but to take care of them and educate them and Christianize them." The sheer audacity of this statement is mind-boggling. The conceit hidden in the wordings that this US president has used against people of Philippines as if they were subhumans is remarkable. Some natural questions come into one's mind after, they certainly came to my mind when I, spent a year in Ivory Coast, having seen the turmoil, having studied the political aspects of it. These questions came into my mind. You can come up with a list of your own. What is a state? Who should authorize this intervention? Who should have authorized, let's say, take the example of Ivory Coast. Who should have authorized intervention in Ivory Coast? A state? A coalition of states? A regional organization like AU or ECOWAS? And in case it was UNO, should it be left to UN Security Council or the General Assembly should be authorized? What about international laws, human rights? And what about the local and national laws, customs, religion? And what will happen to those nations which transcend borders, like Kurds? They are, present in 3-4 different countries. Okay, that brings me to the end of my part of presentation, which I had tried to limit to within 20 minutes time period that was allotted to me. I have skipped many details about Ivory Coast because I basically wanted to, make you think on these lines so that you can, come up with questions rather than looking for answers from these presentations. Look at the part being played by the United Nations. Look at the dilemma that peacekeepers find themselves in, the justification that they have to find once they are in the mission area. Look at what big powers are doing. Are they using United Nations as a tool, or are they contributing towards strengthening United Nations to bring peace to the whole world? With that, I leave the podium and await your questions in the question and answer session by the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brigadier Azam Agha. It was a fascinating presentation. It was very incisive, and you raised very, very pertinent points about the role of the UN, the role of big powers like France and the United States of America, how they manipulate things. Come to think of it, did India intervene in East Pakistan, former East Pakistan? On what grounds did it do that? Was it in keeping with the United Nations Charter? Can you invade another country? They made a humanitarian issue out of it. They said that there were people coming from, migrating from, fleeing from former East Pakistan, and they were under pressure. But they also played a very dubious part in dismembering a member nation. And unfortunately, we couldn't do anything. So very, very pertinent questions. Role of the United Nations. Can you allow your helicopters to bomb the presidential palace? Can you side with Uttara or Bagwa? These are issues which need answers. And I think this has been done not only in Africa, Asia. We also very, very good example quoted by Brigadier Azam Agha was about President McKinley finding excuses to colonize the Philippines. So this has been going on. Even the Gulf Wars, the United States might have gone to help Kuwait, but I remember very clearly that the US ambassador at that time, who was she? I'm forgetting her name, lady, who said, always gave a nod and wink. It's your internal problem among the Arabs. We will not say anything. And then that was made as an excuse to actually launch the first Gulf War. Okay, thank you very much. The speakers have given us some wonderful insights into UN peacekeeping, and Brigadier Azam Agha, thank you very much again, because you actually nailed it on the head by informing us about the nature of the conflict. What is the nature of the conflict? Is it religion? You said no. I totally agree with you. It's resources. We usually use religion as an excuse. I don't think it's an excuse. It is the reason that we go to war. It's not ethnicity. It's not religion. It's resources, scarce resources. So I'll open it for question and answer session. I'll try to divide it equally among the military peacekeepers and the civilian researchers and people who are pursuing their MS and PhDs. So first, you can raise your hand, and I can.
Sir, may I, Dr. Toral, sir, may I suggest we have 10 participants from our friendly countries. So I would request.
Okay.
First,
friendly country.
We should ask them to ask the questions, or uske baad we'll go for our Pakistani civilians and Pakistan Army officers would be at the end.
Sure.
Foreign participants.
Friendly countries, and I would say a female participant, if possible. Ladies first. Raise your hand, please, and we can go for questions. You can name the speaker whom you want to question, please. So the first participant, we have very eminent speakers with rich experience in peacekeeping, and Azam Agha, rich experience in political science and international relations. Wonderful, Azam Agha. Well done.
So Major Douglas from UK.
Major Douglas. Okay, Major Douglas, please.
Marie Douglas, sir.
Okay, Ms. Douglas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that really interesting and really informative brief from all of the speakers today. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of the students for your efforts and your information. My question is really with regards to the DRC. It was mentioned about blood diamonds. earlier on in the presentation. I'm wondering because that clearly encourages criminal activity, therefore the risk of increased violence and aggression to protect that resource. What is the government, the DRC government, doing to try and prevent blood diamonds being almost a source of income to the criminal gangs within the region?
Brigadier Salim, please. Brigadier Salim, she's asking you a question.
Oh, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you very much for asking this question. That what the government, the current government, is doing with regards to the stoppage of the exploitation of the resources. Honestly telling you, and my candid opinion, having discussed the thing with the staff officers there, discussed the things with the contingent people there, it's a bigger game that goes on at the international level. And that bigger game is that he who is giving more chunk of his money to the peacekeepers as they share to survive in a particular mission area, selects the rest of the appointment there in the mission area and let the ball rolling as per their desire. Now, let me quote you an example. The peacekeepers, against the rules of engagement, were deployed in one of the area where the gold mine was located, and that is Slamavira area, closer to the eastern side of the Congo, where the gold mines were being extracted by a company from Australia. And the peacekeepers, since the local people have risen towards this aspect, that the raw rocks are being taken out of that area to somewhere else without giving any shit. Then they have the right to really do that. They have the right to claim. So there was a little uprising in that area. So what the good people sitting in the mission headquarters did was they moved a company in the proximity of that gold mine, which is gross violation of the rules of engagement as far as peacekeepers are concerned. Now they did it, and during my visit, once I learned that, I pointed out to the sector commanders also, and he said, well, these are the I have made mention to the force commander and to the higher ups also, but then they have given us the order what to do. What should we do? No, that is the kind of aspect that I'm trying to highlight is that till the time I have highlighted Brigadier Tughral Yamin, highlighted the rest of the faculty members, highlighted till the time a united will of the political will of the United Nations is not enforced in the region wherever this crisis is going on. Please rest assured that that system would go on as they are, and it may take another century to really settle the issue. But if the political will is there, if the sincerity of purpose is there, if the accountability is there, if the transparency in the actions are there, only then we will be in a position to resolve issues from these areas. So that is my take. That leave this generic question. This generic question relates to all of the African region where the troops have been deployed. My point is that it ought to trickle down from the top at the United Nations level. That translates into enforcement of the political will. That translates into the transparency. That translates into asking. Just take the example. As of today, ladies and gentlemen, there are 14 African republics whose 85% of their GDP is being stashed into the Bank of France, and they can't take their money out from that, and they have to put across the request to the French government for their survival. So if this is the state of affairs, then only God can come down with his hammer in his hand to get the issue settled.
We'll continue to wait for God to intervene. I don't see, I see one hand raised by somebody with a call sign saying IPS.ISB 1979. So, Colonel Shiralam, what do I do? Do I permit this lady or gentleman to ask a question? Because I don't see any foreigners asking any question. Go ahead, IPS, ISB. Go ahead, IPS, ISB 1979. Do you have a question?
So, lady from Japan also, sir.
Okay, I will do that. Let the IPS.
Kiyomi, yeah.
IPS, can others switch off their mics? Can others mute yourself? Kulsum, please ask a question. Kulsum, you are not audible.
Major Kiyumi, sir. Major Kiyumi, it is from Japan, sir.
अच्छा, कुलसुम को सवाल करने थे, उसके बाद मेजर क्यूमी पे चले जाते हैं, ठीक है, क्योंकि मैंने हाथ पहले खड़ा कर दिया। जी कुलसुम, short question, please. Please mute yourself. Please mute yourself. Only the person who's asking the question to unmute. अच्छा, मेरे ख्याल में आप बताइए कल शिरालम कौन दूसरा सवाल कौन करना चाहता है?
सर ये मैम की तरफ से बहुत ज्यादा एको आ रहा है, तो शी कैन पुट हर सिस्टम राइट, और उसके बाद वी कैन ऑलवेज आस्क हर टू कम बैक विद द क्वेश्चन अगेन. वी शुड let Miss Kiyomi from Japan to ask her question.
Miss Kiyomi from Japan. Miss Kiyomi.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for the wonderful sessions, and I really enjoyed it. And then I was curious, like after the session, like a Brigadier Mr. like Imran, sir. So I was thinking, like, under which responsibility or what motivated Pakistan to send a large amount of troops to missions? And then although you've lost many lives of your colleagues, but then you still send so many troops every year and every month. So I wonder what motivated Pakistan to send so many troops to date.
I think it's a general question which is applicable to all the peacekeeping missions. Pakistan has been the largest troops contributing countries till to date. Our first mission was in 1960 in DRC Congo. You heard a presentation on DRC Congo. In the decade of 2000 onwards, we were the leading troops contributing country, contributing also more than 10,000 military and police persons. This is Kumi as per the UN Charter, and we are a signatory of that. And the statement which was given on the very next day, which we found it on 15th of August 1947 by Quaid-e-Azam, who founded Pakistan, that we will be obliged and we will be part of any UN Charter obligations by that. So in that basically directions, we continue to be part of the UN peacekeeping efforts, and that is why we were there at one point of time. Out of, I think, about 32 missions, we were part of more than 70 missions in that. So it is basically the 3 or 4 things which we contribute troops. One is that is maintaining international peace and security of the world, the core issue of United Nations, and we are part of United Nations. The second is the experience which the troops have by working along with other different armies. Like I did mention in Central African Republic, we have 27 different countries which are contributing to troops. So that is a varied experience which the peacekeepers have of correlating interoperability with each other. And it is as per the UN demand. The UN they do ask the member states for their, as UN does not have a standing army, which you know, I think. So do you have the member states to contribute troops? And Pakistan, being a leading troops contributing country, has always been does earmark standing forces which are available, which can be deployed in any mission area within a span time of 30 days to 90 days, because as per the PCRS is the capability system, we are having readiness assurance given to the United Nations. That is why we do contribute troops, and that is why we are the leading troops contributing country as far as DRC Congo is concerned, and we are the third leading troops contributing country. So the host of issues first is the UN Charter, maintaining peace and security as per the direction of the founding father of Pakistan, and definitely having a lot of experience by the troops when they operate in a difficult terrain, difficult challenges, and those challenges are the best practices, lessons learned which your troops have, they bring it back, and which are applicable here in Pakistan also. So basically, sole reason is being part of UN and having a very big standing army. We are about 600,000 plus standing army. We can always contribute troops in spite of the fact that our army is committed in different operations within Pakistan also.
Sir, may I add something?
Yeah, just a moment. Ms. Kiyomi, I have written an article which says foreign policy motivations for Pakistan to send troops abroad. It will address your answers question, and I have also written a book on Pakistan peacekeeping operations Somalia, again where I have, from the international relations point of view, I have addressed this issue. Over to you, Brigadier Azam.
All right, Kiyomi, one more point I want to highlight here, that you see, there are so many nations which are part of United Nations, and every nation endeavors to put in its bid to help out. Some nations which are richer in finances, they help out with doling out money. Some which are richer in resources, they come up with help of material. We happen to be not very rich in money, not very rich in material, but we have a very large standing army. So it is our contribution. Okay, like Japan, I understand, is a very large contributor of UN as far as finances is concerned. Similarly, Pakistan is a very large contributor of UN as far as troops is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the answers from two of Brigadiers. I really appreciate it, since Japan has not really contributing sending troops. So I thank you too. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Now I will switch back for a while to the Pakistani participants, the civilian part. Miss, we have the next hand raised is Miss Sabah Wan. Yes, Sabah, you can shoot your question, please.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead, Sabah.
Okay, sir, my question is to Brigadier Salim, and it is somewhat in addition to what Major Douglas said from UK asked. So, sir, I would like to mention first that I had a discussion with my friend. One of my friends, she is serving in Pakistan Army as a lady officer. So she was a part of Congo. So there is a distraction, I think. I cannot.
Yes, you can. Sabah, go ahead. You are audible.
Okay. So I had a discussion with one of my female friends. She's serving in Pakistan Army, and we had a discussion. According to her, she was a part of Congo as in female engagement team. So she actually she just told me that she was there, and she was in Congo. So hello.
Yes, you are audible. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm audible. Sorry, there's a distraction in a voice, so it's repeating.
Go ahead.
Okay, so she just, according to her, she said that she was there. There was an occasions in Congo, so their local masses were protesting on street still, like the slogans "Go back UN" and like that. So, sir, my question is that Congo, UN has been present in Congo like since decades, like since 1960. So, despite of having natural resources, like diamonds, potassiums, and so many things. So which are allegedly extracted by some very more powerful countries, and that is actually not benefit to the local and the whole country. This poor countries still remain conflict, like basic infrastructure in every field of life. So don't you think that UN has failed to maintain order in Congo and give life to the people by fulfilling its actual mandate of peacekeeping?
No, thank you very much for asking this question. There's no, I would say, wrong as far as the methodology that is being adopted by the United Nations with regards to the peacekeeping is concerned. Whatever do they do through movement of the technocrats joining their heads together, deputing the SRSG, deputing the various substantive and support components in the mission area. There's nothing wrong as far as this complete mechanics is concerned. The wrong lies with the outside powers who are intervening into the area for their vested motives and vested interests. Ironically, not to offend anyone, our sister from UK is also around. Ironically, that old problem that existed, from in partition of the African region amongst the various Western powers and taking out the resources from there, they are yet not over with this mindset somehow. And the remotely, if the government is not doing remotely, their power wielder, their main players, so-called, they say non-state actors, they are intervening, they are conniving with the local political people. The corruption is also one of the leading aspects as far as the Congo administration and the government is concerned. So that sort of they join hands with a local militant organization, local militant groups, and local splinter groups like my, and join hands with the local politician also, and get the things done as per their desire, leaving the common masses, leaving the women, leaving the youth, aside. So if that issue stands resolved through the greater, I would say, intervention and enforcement of the United Nations political will, calling spade a spade. If X country is intervening, and if their have their connectivity of their mutual interest, political and economic interest at that level, that they tend to look the other way. They tend to shy away, and they tend to say, this is just fine, no problem. Take the example of what all India is doing in Kashmir. India has virtually locked down the Kashmiri people for the last 1 year. And you know the voice of the United States, and the voice of the greater world powers. Why they're so mute? For the simple reason, for their vested economic interest. They have India versus USA. They have over $300 billion economy vested interest. Why should Saudi Arabia come to your assistance when they have a $90 billion oil city that is coming up? So this kind of vested economic motives, I will say, put a political pressure upon the respective powers to lay off, and generally they do not come honestly, and in a transparent manner for protecting the humanity on the whole. That is my say on this question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for a very candid answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, Kulsum, can you text your message with your question? That would make us easier because there's a lot of noise at your end. Yeah, try to speak. Yes, with a lot of background distortion. That's why I said it would be better if you could text your message. Can you
I'll text you.
Can you text your question? Text your question. in the dialogue box, and we'll answer it. So Major Ismail, sorry, I don't know what your rank is, sir. Ismail Gada.
Squadron leader Ismail from Nigerian Air Force.
Okay. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning to you, my dear. It's good afternoon at our side. Okay.
It's morning over here. So, Squadron leader Ismail Gada from Nigeria. Okay, my question is, I haven't heard about the lecture so far. Very interesting. Thank you, sirs. I want to just ask a question regarding arms control. What's the UN doing regarding arms control, especially in the African sub-region? Like you mentioned in the DR Congo and also Ivory Coast, most of these militia groups tend to hide behind religious as a reason for their conflict, but most of the conflict is basically for resource control. But if you are going to enforce peace or maybe bring about stability, I think what's the United Nations generally doing regarding arms control? Because most of these militia groups, they are more powerful because of the arms they have. They use it to harm civilians and also suppress civilians. What's generally the UN doing regarding arms control? Because I know most of these countries, they don't manufacture those weapons. They actually get it from developed nations.
Thank you. Ismail, we got it. I think this is a question of DDR. I think one of our worthy speakers will answer, Brigadier Imran or Brigadier Salim. DDR, he's saying how to disarm. What the UN is doing about DDR.
Okay, I will take on the answer first, and then it can be added on by Brigadier Salim. Now, as far as peacekeeping is concerned, Colonel, it is basically, if it is in the part of mandate, remember that is how they operate, how they function. And as a part of mandate, the DDR campaign, that is demobilization, de-weaponization, reintegration and rehabilitation, is part of that arms control, that when you take the weapons from the combatants or non-state actors and reintegrate them in a civil society. So that is how one of the aspects of, or one of the mandates of almost all the missions is going on. Now, if it is a weapon-free zone declared by the country, that is another aspect of it. Then nobody is supposed to take arms. Now, there is one lacuna in that anybody who is a civilian can carry weapon in any UN mission, provided it is not a weapon-free country, because civilians are allowed to carry weapons, maybe for protecting their livestock, protecting their houses, property. So that is one space where the civilians are allowed, and it is the intentions of those civilians of becoming an aggressor while carrying a weapon that is a deciding factor which turns him or her into a combatant. So basically, you are very right that there are, as I think alluded by other worthy persons, that it's basically the resources and the players, international players, which play their part in arming persons, and then the arming persons, the armed groups definitely go for the resources, whatever are there. So UN or the peacekeeping operation, if that is coming on to that, will only be playing its part as a campaign of the DDR campaign or the DDR mandate, provided it is an overall mandate to take the weapons from all the non-state and state actors. So that is another sort of a mandate. If that is there, then that is armed control. But this ongoing conflict is being fueled by the neighboring countries, which I think you must be knowing it, the others, developed countries which have their own vested interest. So going for arms control specifically and disarming everybody is a difficult call as far as UN is concerned.
Please switch off your mic. Mute your mic, please, sir. Mute your mic, sir, please.
So you want to add something, sir, or I should ask the next participant?
No, I just want to add something. Please just mute the mic. Okay, I think it's a very relevant question. Ismail has asked. that whenever the mission, Security Council passes a resolution, and especially in a country where this kind of a, weapon-free kind of an environment is there, where the militant are moving around, it is very important. It must be made part of the Security Council's resolution, mandated task assigned to the peacekeepers, that all militant groups must lay down their arms, those who are not authorized to carry. Till that time, and that is resolved during the initially signing of the contract between the different militant organization, or say called national armed groups, or non-international kind of armed conflict related groups. They must allow the peacekeepers to move in, create a buffer zone, allow the DDR process, comprehensive DDR process, to go in. All display of all weapons in those areas must be strictly banned and be declared illegal, so that the move towards the this peace process in a comprehensive fashion. No, if there is a kind of a dilly-dally tactics being played because of vested political motive, economic interest, then we are asking for our trouble. Otherwise, I fully agree with you. There ought to be a regime to be enforced, that weapons ought to be disallowed, they ought to be deposited, they ought to be destroyed, and the contiguous regions, countries' interferences again and other aspects. See the Boko Haram, see the issue of Al-Shabaab, see the issue of ISIS, see the issue of even Punjabi Taliban phenomenon within Pakistan. All are getting their aid, assisted, and the weapons flow from the outside. So that has to come into action. I end here.
So there's a question there's a point by Ariya Qazi. She says, I think she's a lady. She says, sir, FET's operational responsibility in DRC includes the conduct of routine patrols, requisite comprehensive intelligence gathering capabilities. During such patrols, members of the team encounter deprived women and children, who are a substantial portion of the population of DRC. Kindly highlight the core issues. So, Brigadier Salim, I think the question is directed towards you.
Sir, that is a dedicated part of the tasking that is done to the respective contingents. I did not deliberately elaborate upon the composition and disposition of those troops, because that is not relevant because of our most of other participants as well. It is core part of the different contingent who were sent there. And they are given a specific task of and those patrolling is done with the short range patrol and the long range patrol. Short range patrols are the one which routinely go around to meet the areas where they could come back till evening, and the long range patrol go around and deposit and establish themselves as a temporary operating base, stay in the area for good about 48 to 72 hours, and they are sent with a specific task. Interacting with the tribal heads, interacting with the vulnerable population, interacting with the women, interacting with the children, and getting to know the pulse about the community. What do they need? That is important. What do they need? That is then registered, and they carry out a preliminary investigations also. They come back formulate their reports, and that those reports are then shared through appropriate chain of command to the force headquarters. Those reports are deliberated upon at the mission headquarters level, and then the appropriate appropriate actor, they are ordered to they get into into their action. If the action is with regards to the military peacekeeper, the carrying weapon in their hand in the protection regime, that they are sent. And if the action is regarding protection in the shape of humanitarian assistance, then the respective substantive and support components, they are asked to intervene. But the problem actually lies in the appropriate resource provision for that area. If the people are needing something and they are not timely made available, then we are asking for a trouble. Then whatever promises a peacekeeper can make, they stand no ground. if the things are not being implemented, So I mean, just I will draw your good attention towards the political, I would say, assurances at the United Nations level. At the United Nations level, the lead country, United States of America, they have threatened to reduce the funds for the peacekeeping. No, if that will happen, you are hell-bent for your own political vested motive to twist the tail of the Security Council, or for that matter General Assembly or any member. If you're doing this kind of an arrangement, then what kind of assistance do you expect to those needy people in the mission area?
Thank you.
Sir,
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the elaborative answer.
Sir, I think next is Captain Nahar from Bangladesh.
I think there is a written question which has been sent. I'll just read it out. This is from Kulsum. I think she's been trying to ask a question for a very long time. She says UN peacekeeping is clearly in crisis. Although it is called peacekeeping, it is falling short of bringing and keeping force. Rather, they leave countries in worse condition, as we have seen in the presentations. Given that Pakistan recognizes the UN peacekeeping is hostage, Pakistan does not recognize that. I think speakers said so. That was their own personal opinion. Recognize that UN peacekeeping is hostage to major powers. What is Pakistan's real motivation to involve in peacekeeping operations? How Pakistan's bilateral relations have changed with countries over the years it has been involved in peacekeeping? It's to Brigadier Azam Agha. Brigadier Azam, if you can respond to this question, please, and then we can go over to the officer from Bangladesh.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I'll deal with the question in two ways. Firstly, but before I do that, remember, these are my own personal views. They definitely do not represent my government's views in any case. First of all, I understand that if UN was to take only one step to include only one point in its mandate, majority of these conflicts, at least in the continent of Africa, would come to a standstill. See, the conflicts are not about politics. The conflicts are not about religion. The conflicts are not about any other issue but the mineral resources which lie in those countries. It's the diamonds, it's the gold, it's the cobalt, it's the other mineral resources, which many advanced nations want to get hold of free of cost if possible. So they fuel the crisis by sending in money. They fuel the crisis by sending in ideas. They fuel the crisis by sending in weapons. If United Nations was only to put an embargo of all exports of minerals from any conflict zone for the duration that conflict lasts, I can assure you the conflict will come to a halt within a year or maximum 2 years. You don't need peacekeeping missions for 20 years or 30 years. You just need 1 or 2 years if you were to include only one point in your mandate. No more extraction of minerals from conflict zone till such time the conflict comes to an end. Now, what is the second part? What is there for Pakistan? Why is Pakistan in it? Again, these are my personal views. You see, even if you do not agree with the point of view of a person or an organization, it does not mean that you leave it. In order to remain relevant, in order to be able to influence it for future, it is always a good idea to remain a part of it. And while you are a part of it, it is always a good idea to remain in the forefront of the Committee of Nations. Since we cannot afford money, since we cannot afford material help, the only thing we can afford is by contributing troops. So we are doing that. And in the process, we are also trying to influence that group of nations towards what we think is right. Of course, these are my personal views. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brigadier Azam. Now the gentleman from Bangladesh, he's a question. And after that, Colonel Sher, what do we do? I want Mr. Khalid Rahman, DG IPS, to give his remarks at the end because he's our partner in this conference. What do you say?
Sir, I would suggest that we take last two questions. Both the ladies, they have raised their hand. One is, of course, a friend from a friendly country, and one local participants. We take two questions, and I would request the faculty members to, be a bit short in the answer, so that after that we move to the panelists, sir.
Wonderful. And the question, we'll take both questions together.
I would just nominate, with your permission here, Captain Nahar from Bangladesh. You can please.
Sure.
Captain Nahar. Nahar, can you hear me?
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Assalamu alaikum, sir. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, you are loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Sir, though I have very less knowledge regarding this matter, so my question to Sir Brigadier General Salim, sir. Sir, in Central African Republic, since it has natural resources and there is no independent law enforcement agencies, sir, is there any possibility to help that country to build up the law enforcement agencies? I mean, only even will contribute to do the peacekeeping, or will there be any possibility to help the country to develop their situation?
Thank you very much for your question. Initially, I would say that it's always a state responsibility to maintain law wherever the situation is cropping up. United Nations only intervenes when the things go out of the hands of the state, and the Security Council passes a unanimous resolution of sending peacekeepers into that area under maybe Chapter 6 or Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter, as we have already studied, during the course of our discussion earlier. Now, having said, yes.
Sir, can I say, sir? Basically, sir, the thing I wanted to know, and other thing is that, sir, what is the situation in Central African Republic, as you have been there? Are they working to develop their country, or the situation is getting worse day by day? Are they working to build up their law enforcement agencies?
Captain Nahar, actually, the question is regarding Central African Republic, is Brigadier Imran. And Nihar, you must be knowing it, as you are the leading troops contributing country, Bangladesh, as of now. This building of armed forces, the local state organs, the state law enforcement agencies, is part of a mandate. It is known as security sector reform. And if you had seen some slides, I will put in on the folders also. That is a part of the mandate. The Pakistani contingent there, which I visited, were training at that point of time the local army in different basic drills and expert drills, so that the state institutions will get on its own. Now, that is a major part of any peacekeeping operations, because till the time that country goes for state organs which are standing on ground, it will not be able to de-induct itself. So all the peacekeeping missions, multidimensional, are having this SSR, security sector reform, where the military trains the local military persons, the UN police trains the local police persons, and the civil entities train, like the justice system, like the media, like other organs, they all also train. So it's part of that. And wherever the UN de-inducts, we have been in Liberia, the army was trained, the police was trained, and it took about 14 years ultimately to call off that mission in Liberia in 2017. So it's part of that security sector reform. It's a long process, and but it is being undertaken as part of the mandate of every mission as of now.
Thank you, sir. Okay. You, sir. Last question from the participants.
Kanshir Alam, Ambassador Tajamul Hussain is one of the panelists, and he also wants to ask a question. So after you have this question.
Sir, I would suggest after this question, I would hand over the podium to Ambassador Tajamul, or as you said, then we can, he can give his comments and we can wind up after that, sir. I'll take the last participants from the students.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay, Miss Sobia Khan, please go ahead with your question.
Sir, thank you. Sir, I have gone through some figures indicating that Pakistan was the highest troops contributor to UN from 2000 to 2010, with over 10,000 troops deployed. However, we have now slipped down to the 6th position in troops contribution. I want to know that is this because we couldn't pledge more to UN, or UN squeezed our services for unknown reasons? And also, secondly, sir, we also know that President Trump has cut down UN budget from US Treasury, which has diluted the UN resources considerably. Don't you think that Pakistan should look for other options also for contributing to global peace by engaging itself with organizations like African Union? Your comments, sir.
All right, sir. Sir, Brigadier Salim or Brigadier Imran, sir, or Brigadier Agha, any of the panelists, sir, to please wind up.
I will just take on in the initial part, followed by Brigadier Salim. I will, as far as the first part is that there is a reduction of troops, and now we are the 6th largest troops contributing country. The reduction is all over. It's part of that. Remember, UN peacekeeping is through donations. Donation, the biggest donor, as you know, must be knowing it, is by USA, 22%, followed by China. Japan is the 3rd donor, and UK and France and Spain. So developed countries do donate. So peacekeeping is having a direct linkage with the donations. If the donations are less, definitely there is a troops reduction in that. Now, why Pakistan has gone down to 6th place as of now is because we had missions in Liberia, Sierra Leone, and certain other missions which ultimately culminated, so that troops which were there, for example, 1 infantry battalion has a troop strength of about 850 persons. So you take out a battalion, so the troops come down. Secondly, why are we 6th? The difference between the figures is not that much. Like, I will quote you an example. Bangladesh is leading the troops contributing country, and one person is less. In that category, we have Rwanda. So the 2nd troops contributory country is Rwanda, because there's one person which is less, whereas Bangladesh as of now. So this is why Pakistan has a bit number of certain troops have been curtailed, certain missions have been continued, which were part of that. We are still part of 9 missions out of total of 14 missions. And lastly, donations from the world over have curtailed the troops all over the world, all over the peacekeeping missions. That is why the strength has been reduced.
Okay, whatever Brigadier Imran has said, I just want to add two more angle to that. One was the war on terror. We were actively involved on war on terror during that time, and then the strength was not pledged as the United Nations actually warranted. Number 2, there is now an exceeding, I would say, emphasis by the United Nations on handing over the responsibility to the respective union due to the proximity of African Union to those areas where the conflict is going on. If responsibility is handed over to the regional players, then there is a degree of economy United Nations can ensure in with regards to movement of the troops, with regard to logistics of the troops, with regard to support of the troops. So that is why you see there is exceeding emphasis, like the troops from Ethiopia are now at the top. It is because of the fact that they are in the close proximity, they could immediately intervene and they could toe the lines of the United States also. If they're doing that, perfectly fine for them. And the Brigadier Imran has highlighted the issues concerning finances also. There's very relevant aspect, and because of these few reasons, this intervention is not there. Otherwise, our resolve stands as far as the United Nations is concerned. Wherever there is a requirement, we are always available.
Sir, thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Toghrul, sir, with this, I guess we should now hand over to the other panelists.
So there is a very lengthy question which has been sent by Ambassador Tajammul Altaf. I think, Ambassador Saab, I think you and I will have to sit and discuss it. Ambassador Tajammul thinks that there is a lot of pessimism about UN peacekeeping operations, and yet we are sending troops abroad. I have written an article which has been published in our publication NJIPS. Brigadier Imran Rashid is the editor of that magazine. It says foreign policy motivations for Pakistan to send troops on UN peacekeeping operations. Brigadier Imran, can you send him a hard copy of that to IPS so he can read it?
Definitely, sir. We will send the entire groups of volumes which we have along with the magazine. No problem.
Brigadier Imran has done a wonderful job. He's publishing a research magazine. It's very, very recent, but it contains that article of mine. And I would also recommend, Ambassador Saab, if you can read my book, The UN Peacekeeping Operation in Somalia. It will give you answers to that. You're a seasoned diplomat. Perhaps you can tell me where I'm wrong. Because time has already run out, I would now request Director General IPS, Mr. Khalid Rahman, who has given me the motivation to research on Africa, and obviously Kulsum is playing a leading role in it. But over to you, Ambassador Khalid Rahman, sir, for your remarks. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Toghrul Yamin, for organizing this whole session along with IPS and the CAAS Center for Asian and African Studies, and also for providing me this opportunity to not only listen but to also comment as the chair of the session in this concluding part of the program. I think peacekeeping and role of Pakistan in peacekeeping is rarely discussed within Pakistan, except for some concerned quarters, be it media and be it think tanks or universities. There could not be many reasons for this, except that for some reasons, the intellectuals as well as the media does not attracted to it, having perhaps no incentive, although there must be many incentives, I believe. Keeping in view that since 1960s, Pakistan is taking part in these operations, and as has been mentioned quite often during this session, that we are among the top countries contributing to the peace missions of UN. In fact, I noted that there have been more than 200,000 troops that have taken part in these operations. And as has been mentioned, there have been more than 50 countries or even greater than 60 countries where these operations have taken place. We have heard excellent presentations discussing 3 case studies. In fact, these are eyewitness accounts which have not only the specific cases, but also cover the overall context of global governance. So I'm not going to be making a long speech, knowing that we have already exceeded the time limits, but I would like to point out 3 key points that come to my mind for consideration of all the participants. First is related to the conceptual aspect. Peacemaking, though apparently involves a few tasks related to civil governance and military operations, it has a number of important dimensions related to political, social, and cultural environment and economic, and so on and so forth. Most important of these dimensions, I believe, is humanitarian. And to me, that should be the motivation of every peacekeeper coming from any country or engaged in peacekeeping at any conflict region. But we know cases, and I think many has been mentioned today also, in the history of peacekeeping where other than humanitarian motivations of the peacekeepers destroy in many ways the very purpose of the operation. Bosnia being one of the most prominent examples, and a number of examples highlighted today in the presentation, particularly pointed out so ably, I would say, by Brigadier Azam. For us Pakistanis, I believe it has in fact another extremely important dimension. And that dimension I would call faith dimension. As doing any human thing is a core value in Islam. The Quran calls it its way, and Allah guides those who follow His pleasure to the pathways of peace and brings them out by His will, from the depths of darkness into the light, and guides them to a straight path. Quran also says and describes reconciliation as the best policy. It also states that God abhors any disturbance of peace. Similarly, Allah tells us that if anyone saved a life, it would be as if he saved the life of the whole humanity. So, while this aspect is not much discussed with reference to the role of Pakistan and peacekeeping, this needs to be highlighted at every stage of the engagement in peacemaking, from planning to execution and conclusion. The second aspect is related to the practical dimension. We know, and it has been indicated in the discussion also today, that this is the age of hybrid war. And Pakistan has been a target of its adversaries with an extremely negative propaganda to paint it as a peace breaker, importantly in the post-9/11 arena. To be an active player in peacemaking gives us an opportunity to counter such negative propaganda by our actions. However, making it known both within and without requires additional set of activities. My feeling is that while we may have gained a good name among the concerned quarters, we have not been able to make our contribution known to the world at large, not even within the country. Third aspect is both related to conceptual and practical dimensions. Our participation in peacekeeping exposes us to the conflict dynamics and the expertise required at ground level to deal with conflicts in specific regions and areas. One of the key takeaways that has been highlighted in this discussion is that along with apparent local factors, there are regional and global political and economic factors which include the lack of political will on the part of UN, and some may also add the financial constraints of the UN because it is dependent on the great or former colonial powers and their agenda. And this has been, I think, quite ably highlighted by different speakers, and particularly in question answer session. Cumulatively, this knowledge and expertise should help us not only in understanding and addressing the bigger issues related to the world, peace and governance at large, but also play a role in improving that governance. So how this knowledge, expertise and interactions which we gain from these peacekeeping operations can be used to initiate some kind of a political and diplomatic campaign should be part of our agenda as one of the key players in one of the important operations of the United Nations. I know this is a big challenge, yet I believe for genuinely achieving peace, this needs to be highlighted at every level. So it will be a long journey, but someone will have to take lead And I think if someone take lead in frequently insisting and getting it recognized that if we want peace in this planet, which we have the only place to live, then certainly we will find people all around the globe to be part of this campaign. As was just mentioned in last remark of Brigadier Toghrel, we held this particular webinar in the context of a larger activity that IPS and SIPS, as well as Center for Asian and African Studies, have started, titling Understanding Africa. And we thought that this Pakistan's participation in various activities in Africa, it has a long list. In the past, Pakistan has been contributing in various ways, but one of the most prominent ways of contribution has been Pakistan's participation in these UN peacekeeping operations. So perhaps it could be a good idea to discuss what was the agenda, what we did, and how can we move on to not only focus in peacekeeping aspect, but also understanding some of the areas where we have performed, what was the case, how we performed there, and what lessons we can learn. And in fact, those lessons, as I just mentioned, are not confined to specific regions or specific areas, but also the governance at the global level at large. Thank you very much again to all the panelists. They have made very good presentations. In fact, I was just wondering that if their presentations are not published, I can offer that we would like to have these presentations converted into some papers, and we can include them in our next issue of the policy perspective, which is due very soon. Thank you very much.